In as much as we discuss hard stuff, you know, when we're talking about matters governance, it appears like it's hard stuff. Sometimes we lighten up, and that's why we had to engage Freddie for a second or two. So we look at the papers briefly as we also look at the crucial conversation. And I mean, one story that takes center stage, or which is the biggest of stories, is on this that one would consider as a blow to President Uhuru Kenyatta. You know, it has now become a joke in the country when you're told hata kama ulikuwa sijui na nini harakisha haraka kabla you know koti iseme it is illegal. So you know the fear is real, but also there are people who are viewing this as a good thing, as a positive thing, that for the very first time at least we're having, you know, the judiciary performing and working you know, within its jurisdiction as constituted by the Constitution, and you know, as an independent body. But we do not know how independent this then is, because there is a quota that kind of feels like there's some bit of judicial activism. I don't know what you make of the ruling of yesterday. Remember, this is a conversation that had raised a lot of controversy on these judges that were left out after President Uhuru Kenyatta stayed for a long time before declaring the 41, were they 41 or 44, you know, or saying their position at this particular time. So there's a question as to whether indeed this ruling by the courts is justified, and whether President Uhuru Kenyatta will proceed over to make sure that he appoints these judges. So it's a standoff as the court gives President Uhuru Kenyatta 2 weeks to appoint 6 judges, failing or which they will be deemed to be in office, but lawyers warn ruling could bring crisis. A story captured on page 4. Before we get to the aspect of whether it's judicial activism or not, this in particular one, maybe Japheth.
I think that what is happening is not right. There has to be a good relationship between the executive and the judiciary, as much as the judiciary still has to remain independent. Because the situation that we are seeing is now, it's like payback time. You refuse to appoint the judges. There's no any case that favors the government that will ever pass through the judiciary. So what we really need is, and I think this came up when the new CJ was being appointed, and she did promise that she's going to work a lot around the relationship between the judiciary and the executive. So that at the end of the day, we need administration of justice. And administration of justice cannot happen in an environment where there's very poor relationship between the executive and the judiciary. So some reaching out has to be done, of course, within the law. But as Kenyans, I think at the end of the day, we need to think about the ordinary Kenyan who gets affected when the judiciary and the executive are fighting. So the president and the chief justice really has to close in on each other. I
do not know what our understanding of working, you know, in unison or in tandem or together then would mean in this case, because we acknowledge that indeed the Constitution says that these institutions should complement each other, or these arms of government should work complementing each other. But to what level can you complement each other if you are an independent body, and most importantly, if it's a question of justice? And at some point in time as the courts, you term it, you know, that you know, there are several things that the executive is doing that are not proper.
Yes. Linda, I think regardless of our political stance before, because in this country we are so political, we judge everything from where I'm standing politically. I think this is where every Kenyan need to see it, or rather see things from the same angle. We agree that a nation that is not guided by a constitution, or rather a president who does not follow a constitution, might give us a banana republic. And President Uhuru goes down as the president who has been at loggerheads for the longest time with the judiciary than any other president in history. And so it is high time we know what is really happening. And I would wish that everything be done right according to the constitution, according to the law, so that at the end of the day we can salvage our nation. Who knows what president is coming next? What if they cannot follow the law? What happens? What becomes of this nation? And so I like the fact that the judiciary is putting their best foot forward to defend the constitution and to defend the law, and I think that is a good thing. From where I'm seated and standing, let us continue in that manner. Let the courts factory reset every bad thing that has been done in this country, especially for the last 4 years.
But are the courts doing that genuinely? Maybe what it is that Japheth raised, but it could be true, and I mean that's technically what it is that we want. If the courts are going to be the guiding factor for us to make sure that we uphold the rule of law, then fair fair enough. But on occurrences where there's some evident bad blood between the courts or the judiciary and the executive, and therefore maybe the courts are operating in relation to this bad blood, then one would put a question mark. Do you suppose they are genuine in overturning some of these processes that have been, passed by the executive as at now? Would it have been a different thing if maybe we did not have the conversation of we shall revisit?
Let's look at the things that the judiciary has annulled in the last few days.
Yes.
What have they been saying? What has the bone of contention been? They do not have a problem with whatever the executive wants to achieve, but they say the process upon which the establishment was done is questionable, and that is the bone of contention between the judiciary and the executive. I really don't think this is a bad blood. It is just a matter of doing things right and how they need to be done. And for that reason, I think this is the way to go. Who knows what this country holds tomorrow? What if we get a president who does not adhere to the law and the constitution of this country? It is good. It is shaping the next president to come and just do what needs to be done within the parameters of law and the constitution. And so this, I don't think in any way this is bad blood.
All right. Well, we speak of these key things that you say, are as well captured, and speak of what it is that are decisions that were overturned by the courts. And April 21, 2021, Chief Administrative Secretary position declared illegal. And we come back to the aspect of the minimum tax. And September 2021, declared illegal as it's a subject business to double taxation. And of course, on the BBI, August 2021, Court of Appeal declares the process illegal, state to appeal at the Supreme Court. We're still awaiting for that conversation. Huduma number, just the other day, October the 15th, 2021, rollout declared illegal process, floated data protection regulations, and a couple of other things that we have witnessed. And now coming to this, and we also understand what gave birth to this. We can probably go back and hint at history, what laid out President Uhuru Kenyatta taking that delay on declaring these judges or appointing these judges, and then later on says that he's going to quash these 6 based on integral issues. And it's not been clear as to what he really meant when he said that, because time has been left open for him to come and say this is the reason why I think these people have questionable integrity, and therefore as a president of the state I decided not to appoint them. And so it's not been quite clear. But in all this, there is evident bad blood. In all this, one party feels like, the courts are against us. In all this, the courts feel like, we could be doing a good thing. But, for pundits, it appears like the courts are fighting back. What will it take for these two arms of government to have a conversation and get us off the hook? Because, again, the very same pundits argue that this is a recipe for disaster.
It's a standoff, just as you had said.
And
I think it's very serious. We are entering into an era of utadu.
Yes.
The courts will give the orders, will not obey them. They'll come give other orders, will not obey them, and utadu. For example, now they say the castes are still in office. They're earning, they're working, in spite of the court order.
Right.
All the other issues you've talked about, no action has been taken. And that's why I strongly believe that there's a strong element of impunity. That's there, and I agree with Willie.
Right.
That as Kenyans we should not accept. And as we refuse impunity, we must also say that there has to be a time when all this has to come to a stop. We have to revisit sanity and say that it takes just 2 people to close themselves in a room like this and say this just has to stop. The judiciary, the head of the judiciary, and the head of the executive has to start somewhere. We cannot allow all this to continue going on forever. At the end of the day, it's service delivery that is suffering when the judiciary and the executive doesn't work together. And now we're in a Fuliza economy. People are suffering all over in the slums where some of us work. People are suffering, so we don't have time to waste in impunity and in fighting within government structures. So the CJ and the president really have to come together and discuss these issues. And we have also to come up with sustainable ways of ensuring that the judiciary operates independently. We've talked about issues around budget, for example, that the judiciary is terribly underfunded. And that is also coming in as a way of punishment. You rule against us, we deny you the budget. Then who suffers at the end of the day?
All right, so in the event that there is a streamlined relationship, in this case, and then we have these arms of government somehow working together, then what does that do to democracy? Because if we are to go to the rulings that have been declared by the court, they have all reasons, and they've taken so much time to study the cases, to listen to the petitioners, to listen to the respondents, to listen to the amicus curiae if there, to listen to the lawyers, and come up with rulings based on facts and figures, and backing their facts and figures on what is declared in the Constitution. And therefore, in the event that there's going to be a sitting between these two, then do we get to a point where, again, we will be overlooking the rule of law because these people have to work together, these people have to appear like they have cleared their differences, and so there are occurrences where the court will have to compromise just so they would please the executive?
You see, Linda, one would tend to wonder, was it did executive have a problem with Maraga the man or the whole judiciary system? Now that we have a new CJ, what is the problem now? Okay, I think to some extent one would wonder, is this a case of who wears the pants in this country? You do this, we do that. Is it a matter of underfunding in the judiciary that the judiciary has a problem with? What happens if the government now funds them? Does that mean that justice now that justice cannot prevail in this country? And so the most important thing is just do the right thing. That is all we're asking for. Just do the right thing. It doesn't matter who is saying this, who is doing that. Let the president do the right thing within the parameters of law. Let the judiciary not be personal with the president. Let everything follow as it's supposed to follow. When we say ndume wawili wakipigana ni nyasi umia. Sisi ndio nyasi. We are on the food chain, we are the people down there. The fights between the president and the judiciary might not even affect them directly, but they affect us. It is the service delivery that is being affected in this country. It is us tunaumia. We need to be speaking now moving forward. How do we fix the economy for these people? Like he said, people are suffering. That is what we care about. Let us not see non-issues that are not even helping this country in any way. And so for me, I would say, or rather, these are not even issues to preempt. Like we can only say maybe this happened, maybe this is not happened. Let's have actual truth. This is what happened. Let the president come out and say these guys are fighting because of this. My appointment of judges didn't go through because of this, so that we stop preempting in the media houses. Let the president come out clear. Let the judiciary come out clear. Let's
look at the ICJ ruling and briefly take ourselves back to history during the times of the likes of Amos Wako, and fast forward, come to the Jubilee government and the attorney generals that have been, of course, starting by the mortician himself, Attorney General Githumu Igai. Well, and here we are, a different era, and there have been allegations, or at least pundits have tried to reason and say, there could be that the president's advisors are failing him. And we understand that the chief advisor on matters legal affairs, again, of the president should be the Attorney General. Do you suppose then that, again, it makes sense to argue that they have been misadvising the president? And in this case, then, there could be need for the executive, first of all, to check in themselves and, put their house in order. Get the right advisors, get great brains and great minds that would direct the government right, and before they start pointing a finger at the judiciary, because even during the cases of the nullification of the 2017 presidential elections, much as you'd want to point a finger at Maraga, hugely we had these individuals arguing in courts, the Attorney General arguing and before the government, or at least sitting before the courts on behalf of President Uhuru Kenyatta's government. So what does it speak of the executive itself before we start looking at the flows of the judiciary?
I don't think that the president is being misadvised. Of course, he comes out as a fairly intelligent person. So if he's misadvised and he has all the powers, he ought to have even sacked some people. I think it's purely what we said, is impunity that has to be addressed. If you're being misadvised by your people, you send them home. It's very, very simple. You ask them to resign, then you bring on board new people. And the president has hundreds and hundreds of advisors. So it can't be an accident that all of them
have gone wrong.
Have gone wrong,
Okay.
yeah. That can't happen. It's not a possibility. It's not a possibility.
We take it a notch higher on this one as we close, and really regime change, activities, revolution activities. We have seen them across the different countries of Africa, and I mean even across the global fraternity. And in the pillar of regime change, or the gamers within the regime change aspect, in most cases they will always come in a country and probably capture the media fraternity, capture the civil society, capture them in the sense that, you know what, they now want to dictate what direction they say they take. And so you find that the civil society is always trying to fight the government in every aspect. They will capture the judiciary, and so in this pyramid you'll find these key pillars of the country. And in the event that the media will fall into the hands of the regime changers, automatically you expect the same. And hence the reason why we're talking about judicial activism today. Could there be some possible penetration of regime changes, in the sense that if we're not careful, then we land ourselves into disaster?
You've hit the nail on the head, and well said. You've said it so well, and I think that is where the issue is. Everything that has gone south in this country, we can trace it in the last 4 years. When they knew, or rather when the constitution says now after 10 years, President Uhuru, you have to exit. So he comes up, he comes up with very deliberate actions to just make sure there are some form of impunity and dictatorship. And that is why, if you look at all these things that have, the court has been saying this has not been the way it's supposed to be done, it was a clear path to influence the next president, to influence the next regime that is coming in, like the collection of data on matters Huduma number. It was very questionable. Why do you have to go all that way of not using the constitution, or rather working with the constitution? It is because there is some sense of dictatorship. You can feel dictatorship, and I think this is the right time the court is coming out just to put that barricade we need as a nation. You say, hey, we are past that age where you wake up and think the law is one of your many boys there. We have to defend this law with whatever it takes, so that we make sure that there is a smooth transition of this regime and the regime that is coming next. And so these are traits of dictatorism, which I think and I feel the judiciary is up and against, just for the sake of this nation. Who knows what would happen after 2022 if dictatorship comes in this country? And one of the issues as I came in the morning thinking, the biggest issue we have had in this country is someone saying that their election has been stolen. Okay, Raila, now this is, I will say it, Raila is one of the main presidential candidates in this country. Now we know that the state is behind his presidency. He's even doing his campaign with state machinery. Exactly. Okay. You see, and now there is a dictator here who is now coming out as a dictator, and he's supporting someone who says his election is stolen. So the judiciary has to stand right now. If there is a time we need the judiciary to be strong and to stand well, it is this time.
Crucial matters that are really, really important. I am afraid that in as much as I want to close on this topic, then we have to raise a couple of issues. And I mean, I don't know whether you've had a chance to even go to the High Court and to these courts of Nairobi, Milimani and all that, and to see how many Kenyans are always standing there, you know, day in, day out. They're coming, they're hoping for the hearing of the cases, they're hoping for justice to be served, and it's delayed for years and years and years. Is it hypocritical then for the judiciary to, and we're not trying to say that these matters are not of great importance. They are certainly of great importance, because they dictate where the nation is headed, you know, and I mean, when we're talking about matters of the nation, we're talking about every other Kenyan. So why is it that they are so fast and they are so quick to deliberate on these crucial matters in terms of challenging what, of course, maybe has been declared in Parliament, what the state is doing or what the executive is doing? Yet they are so slow in dispensing justice, you know, on issues that also could be crucial on individual basis.
First of all, I would want to say something about judicial activism. I actually come from a strong civil society background. We work with communities in the slum areas. And what is called judicial activism is basically the judiciary saying things which respond to the needs of the people. I remember it came up with my good friend, Dr. William Mutonga, when he was the CJ. So there's nothing really like activism is not like just doing the right thing. Has the judiciary failed in terms of responding to cases that involve the people? Again, I've worked a lot with the court users committees around the country, and I've visited quite a number of courts in this country. There's some slight improvement. Many judges around the country are really struggling to deal with the case backlog, but there's a lot that still has to be done.
Okay.
And it does not start and end at the judiciary. There's a whole criminal justice system. So everybody within that criminal justice structure must do what is right, starting right from the police, the ODPP, all the way to the judiciary. If that chain, everybody within that chain does what's right, they will not have these instances of cases delaying. Yeah, that's where there's a big problem, cases delaying because of other issues, other people within the chain. Does the judiciary always just deal with the political cases very fast, and then perhaps the small man suffers or the small woman suffers? We've had some of those cases, of course, it's true. If you move around, you do legal clinics within communities, you hear of a lot of cases which are being delayed. And sometimes it's either from the judiciary side or even from the parties within a case, where some of these cases, people try to kill them even before they get into the judiciary. People destroy evidence, so then you cannot proceed the case when the evidence has been destroyed. And then we cannot, of course, rule out there's still corruption in the judiciary.
No, yes, there's still corruption in the judiciary. The same judiciary that has been tasked for the longest of time to deal with corruption. And I remember you've heard them being pinpointed as the missing link to the fight against corruption. I don't know whether they still hold that tag or then it shifted to the DPP and the DCI. You've heard the numerous cases that have been leveled on them, and people have felt like, well, they are captured by the executive somehow, and they are not dispensing their duties as expected. They're not getting, down on ground to make sure that they guarantee the courts, watertight cases so that they can deliberate on them. We still are grappling with the matters of corruption. And there's a story on KEMSA scandal also that has been captured. It should be on the People Daily. I know you've not looked at that, but definitely it finds itself also on these other papers. Yes, on the Standard as well, right?
Nation,
and also the Nation. Yes. So here it is, the front page of the People Daily. KEMSA's 5.5 billion shock to suppliers. CEO says he does not have money to foot bills of COVID-19 PPEs providers. And this is not strange, but the KEMSA scandal is here with us, and numerous other corrupt cases or corruption cases in the country. Your preferred presidential candidate as well, being put to a fix on numerous occasions because of allegations of corruption scandals, and allegations of having his foot soldiers also involved on matters graft. What will it take for us to be successful on this? And especially when you have these crucial cases that really we do not get evidence for, and even worse, they take turns and twists, and even the murder cases that we have witnessed in the countries, how many of them have we been successful to say that, what, now we have this, we still are having the Tirop case, it will be going round and round and round, and maybe we do not get anything in return.
You said something important, and I don't know how many times I have to refer to that, because that is what it is. When there is regime change, especially in Kenya, you will see all manner of madness. William Ruto, you mentioned him. He was an angel before 2017. He what should I say? When he was supporting the president, he was an angel. But now that he's expected to be the president, he's a thief. And so every story about him being a thief came out between now and 2017. But in previous times, he was an angel. Why is this coming up? Because they need to paint him as the bad guy. And I want to be very thankful by that to TV47. I think this is one of the mainstream medias that does not take sides. Right now, as we speak, people like us who support the deputy president, there are TV stations we cannot step foot to, because this is how the state works. They will brand you as a thief, and then they will let their outlets of the media, because they own the media, the major media houses, to run with the stories. And so woe unto anybody who believes a lie against another person. And so we have to defend him on TV like TV47, which, by the way, I thank you for your rapid growth, that we can say something good about William Ruto, and it can cut across to so many viewers. And so thank you very much, Linda. I think every decision has been made between 2017 and now is because of succession politics, and that is the bone of contention. What becomes of this nation when we are talking about health? What becomes of this nation when matters of justice are compromised? What shall be of this nation? And that is why we are saying things have to be done right. For once, let us not argue on who did wrong, who did right. Let us remain on the table or rather, let's remain on the discussion of who did the right thing
but I mean, that could be a good thing to focus on. But we do not focus on that when evidently money is being lost. When, you know, certain billions have been put up to this project.
Looking for campaign
and then
money
before
now.
you know it, no project is working, and then there is no money. How can we just say, oh, let's focus on who did the right thing in such a scenario?
Let me speak from the perspective of a person who does not have a preferred presidential candidate.
Yes.
You know, the battle we have in this country is not the battle between the so-called dynasties and the others are called what?
The hustlers.
The hustlers.
Yes.
The battle in this country is between one class of billionaires supporting one political side and another class of billionaires supporting the other political class. And at the center of this battle is control of resources to individuals, either through manipulating the government procurement system or through direct corruption. So that's what's there. Both sides of the political divide have their own cockroaches, and there's so many. What should concern us as ordinary citizens whom I speak for, in slums around this country, in very remote rural areas who are suffering every day, is how they are able to shape the political discourse to speak for them, to do what is right for them. At the end of the day, these guys will steal, they'll fight in front of the TV, in the evening they'll convene to discuss how tenders are being distributed and how they're benefiting from it. So what I've always advised people, issues around ethnicity, issues around electoral violence come in because we fight wars which don't belong to us. We fight wars that belong to the political leaders. Now we must start fighting wars that demand that the political leadership in this country must do the right thing for us, irrespective of who is the president. The right thing has to be done. People have to refuse to be used as weapons of mass production of votes.
You speak like one of us. You speak like a hustler.
No, I don't believe in personality.
Well, he said,
I don't believe in that.
The reason I'm saying that is because we see for the first time in the history of this nation, we are discussing things to do with us, not them.
But the framing is wrong.
We are discussing things about our economy, not their interest. And so welcome on board, my brother. Because you speak like one of us. The language is the same.
Okay, well, I don't know how the language is the same when, again, there's some fear that is being sold to us. And it's not fear being sold to us, it's actually the reality of how things are. We are having our very own starving, and I mean, in different parts of the country, that's a reality. President Uhuru Kenyatta declaring that as a national disaster, and I don't know to what level then the government is coming in to make sure that the lives of these people are protected, food is taken to them. And this is a story that has been captured in the Standard newspaper, probably just an expansion of the same, and it speaks of alarm as maize reserves stores are empty. It is on page 4 of the Standard newspaper. I don't know how far we should be talking about this. There are countries that have tried to develop mechanisms that would be very friendly towards making sure that the food basket is all filled up in their respective countries. You know, we have the likes of Zimbabwe that try so hard to embrace the command agriculture. Command agriculture speaks volumes in terms of making sure that they come together, you know, they come up with policies and they come up with strong ways of making sure that they're able to provide for the country. They get surplus that they can actually export and sell to other countries. You know, we are having that conversation. Agriculture was amongst the key drivers of the economy at some point in time. Today, the level at which we embrace agriculture is wanting in the sense that even what it is that we have been able to produce, we're not able to, you know, sustain ourselves with. We're not able to get them to the right destination. Sometimes we have to see food rot in stores because we can't get them to point A or point B. And even worse is that when we're having these cases of starvation, these cases of drought that are being reported to us. And so NCPB seeks about 10 billion to buy maize and other foodstuffs as reserve stores run dry.
We have a problem in this country. Because these are issues I was taught in primary school that 80% of our economy is agricultural. That was I was taught in primary school. I don't think it has changed so much. But the issue is that we don't prioritize what is right for this country. So that we'll rather mess up our agriculture because it's easier to bring cheap products from outside the country, most of it illegally. So what we need to do in this country is proper planning. When we talk about food security, again, it has to go all through the chain. How do you empower small farmers within our communities. Urban agriculture is picking up. How do you empower young people in urban slums, in the poor communities, to be able to produce, at least from the beginning, what they can consume, as they even escalate to what they can sell. Then we need to deal also with corruption. You know, we've had a big problem with the issues around the maize scandal.
Yes,
I remember
yes.
the Nosumukate government. We had all this problem about maize scandal. What happened? Has anybody been prosecuted?
No.
Do we speak about it anymore?
No.
We manufacture one scandal, we silence over it, then we get to the other one. So food security has to begin by punishing people. 2, there has to be the right people in the right government. My interaction with the civil servants in this country is that most of the technocrats do a very good job within our government structures, but they're not the people who make decisions. Decisions are made by politicians up there, senior people who don't even allow the technocrats to work very well. So if we start by having the right people in politics, in positions of power, then we can sort out issues like food security. And that's why we are also saying that even this issue about being obsessed with political parties, with personalities, I think it's time now we start looking at people independently. You want a political position. Who are you? What is your past? What did you do previously? Have you been accused of any corruption allegation? How was that issue handled? So that the people that we bring on board, whether they're from the civil society, they're from the private sector, they're from the civil servants, are the people who really want to serve this country. And
you know, I'm sorry, I cut you short. The big players, the Nusumkati government you mentioned, and we speak of individuals that were directly, you know, mentioned in these maize scandals conversations that we're talking about today. Of course, the DP, the Right Honorable was the Prime Minister then. So we are just about to either have them as the key leaders or as the key leader. One of them will be one of the key leaders, at least until maybe, well, the political terrains shift. But as of now, we can confidently or authoritatively say that it's a two-horse race. To be honest, what will it take for us to realize that, you know what, we're being taken for a ride? And so these very individuals that were mentioned or were named on these scandals that we're talking about do not find their way up. And if they do, then there's going to be a change of how we're dealing with this.
First, it is a shame, being the president, that your own government can declare hunger as a national disaster. You're outwardly saying, I have failed to secure food in this country. And there is no way we can even grow economically on hungry stomachs. Right now, Linda, land is one of the biggest production factors. Who owns massive land in this country? What is that land doing idle? Can we come up with policies that will ensure that we have food security on land? The other thing we need is water. Today, after 57 years of independence, we still rely on rain to farm. We have not adopted to the new technology of water harvesting. We are not capturing water. The rains are here, and probably no one will capture that water. It will go all the way to Indian Ocean and waste there. All right? The problem comes in when we have people who do not think about a generation. They just think about an election. How do we make sure that we have affordable and cheap food in this country? How do we make sure that we are advertising agriculture as a good business to the young people? Because if you look at the adverts that are done on TV for agriculture, it is old people. How do we make sure that we are engaging the young people to make sure that we have food security? They venture into farming. Now, there are some very nice policies in the bottom-up economic model to make sure that there is food security. There are tax incentives on young people who want to venture into farming so that we encourage these people to farm for food. All right? Right now, you don't need a massive land again to do agriculture. You just need a small portion of land and do something we call smart farming. You can do a few cows there. You do your own meat there. And one of the things we need to understand, and until you take the food security matters upon yourself first as an individual, I think the government of this country and the government thereof have proven fertile and radioactive on matters to give us sufficient food. Make sure know where you're living. Get those goonie bags. instead of buying cabbages and spinach, do like 3 goonie bags, plant your own spinach. That is sufficient food for you. Do some tomatoes outside your kitchen garden, so that you will find people who have a small piece of land. They are buying tomatoes, they are buying spinach, instead of putting it upon themselves to make sure that there is food coming from where they live. And when you do that, you even save on your money. If you one of the things we can look at today is the policies that we are making in this country. The other day, we had a conversation with William Ruto about the economy of this country, and I will tell you this for sure. He said that things don't go wrong, things start wrong. And so we asked him, what do you mean by things go wrong? He gave us a very good scenario point. He says, look at our retirement. Many people retire to poverty. Okay, someone who is retiring means they have worked for between 40 to 50 years. They have been building their lives, building the nation for 40 to 50 years, but they retire poor. What does that mean? They had a bad start. The money they were worked for went to education. They went that money went to healthcare. That money went to things that however the government is supposed to take care of you. People don't have savings. People are retiring to poverty. And he says one of the things we need to do is factory reset this country to make sure that now people are having a good start, so that now we can even start having savings plan and some very nice government incentives to make sure that people are retiring into wealth. Statistics has it that most people, when they retire at 70, hardly make it to 5 years. Most of them die of depression. They cannot afford health medicare, and so that is where we are saying, let us factory reset this country and start giving people the right start, so that because when we give you a right start, it means, Linda, you're able to take your children to a good school and save money at the end of the day. You're able to afford very nice healthy meals in your house and save money at the end of the day. Housing is something that came up in the conversation. People rent houses for almost their lives and they retire into nothing. They have nowhere to start. They didn't build a home because they were paying a very expensive private school education for their children, and so they have nothing left. And so when I tell people, William Ruto may be accused in the last 4 years, but listen to where he's coming from. Listen to where he wants to take this country, because he has been branded a thief for the last 4 years. Look at everything. Everything has collapsed in the last 4 years. We have had a conversation of the big 4 agendas in the first 5 years. The nation was doing very well, but when the stories of BBI and changing of the constitution came in, the whole government abandoned its whole idea of the big 4 agendas and started running into things that were not making sense for this country. And we took a nosedive on everything that concerns this nation. Hold
it. You know, it's interesting how then your boss that you speak of says the government at some point in time lost track, courtesy of the handshake. But at the same time stands in the podium and say, you know what, you go down in history as one of the best performing presidents. You have done this and that and everything, and for that we celebrate and look forward to continue with your legacy. It's contradicting, to be honest. I'm just looking or reading.
It is wisdom.
All right, well, let's wait and see how much of wisdom that is.
You don't fight your boss.
Okay, all right, well, okay, so the 48 laws of power. Japheth's body language dictates that he does not agree with what you say, unless you tell me otherwise.
I don't agree. In the slums, you say mnatubeba ujinga. The problem in this country is not about laws and policies. Go to any capital around the world, you always be shown a Kenyan who is doing a great job. Go to countries like Rwanda, even here in Southern Sudan, many countries of the world, who are developing those policies and laws?
The Africans.
They're Kenyans. You'll always be shown a Kenyan. The problem is a political environment that puts those policies and laws into action. That's why we have enough policies that are very good, that are very well done. Who knows about those policies? No civic education about it.
Right.
I support what has been saying about basket gardening, for example. That's something that people do a lot in the slums. There are even NGOs that are helping people to do that. But can we roll out a national program that ensures that every household is able to, at least at a minimum, produce what they can consume? Then the issue of hunger will be over. Because you cannot even sell if you cannot feed yourself. So whether Ruto becomes the president, anybody else becomes the president, as long as we are able to implement the policies, we'll be good. All right, well and good. And
allow me to do something. This a very nice writing there. It says, an investment in knowledge pays the best interest. I've picked that from your
Yes.
Now that means you're saying about civic education and knowledge. No government wants acknowledge
the
people. They want you to thrive in ignorance. So put it upon yourself to know how things operate. Put it upon yourself to know the policies that are in place, so that you also take advantage of the policies in place to grow yourself. But otherwise, we thrive in ignorance, and until you put it upon yourself, we will continue going down.
Well said. And in as much as we'd want to embrace the basket gardening and all that, I know it could come in handy for a couple of few people. But remember, we're talking about the Turkana that is extremely dry. So in as much as you would think on those angles, where is the water? Animals, you go to yes, you go to our parks today, they're dying. You know, you just find carcasses down there because, well, global warming, and we also have not derived policies and mechanisms of dealing with the same as the likes of Israel, Egypt would do. Well, that aside, and we have had presidents visiting the country, and President Uhuru Kenyatta going to the other side. And in most cases, we have pointed fingers at African leaders for not bargaining well on behalf of the people of Africa. Maybe explains what you say. It's on rare occasions that you'll find a leader who wants their people enlightened, because they know if they are enlightened, they will challenge me. And the challenge is what they do not want. So we take a quick breather and we come back and look briefly at the bilateral talks that Kenya had with the president of Malawi. And we see what then do we get out of this, and just how genuine these talks are, because how many have we had and how many have we seen fruits being enjoyed from after this break.
Oh, hi guys. Sorry, you found me 5 minutes before I started recording, but anyway, so most of you have been asking me why I started Lady CLC 19 with Joy Rongo. I have also had my own share of pain. I know how it feels to want to give up. This is basically here to speak hope and inspire somebody who's going through a rough patch, to tell them that they can turn their pain into power. Our guests are normally here to share their experiences so that you can know somebody else did it, so you can also come out of it stronger and better. Let me go to my recording, and remember to always stay tuned every Saturday at 8:30 p.m.
Undertaking husband duties on a boyfriend tender.
Guys, with bromance, do you share your woman with the bro?
Have a sister, give me your sister. I show you how these things are done.
So you go release and be like,
Men supporting each other, not only financially, but also socially.
Don't mingle with women you can't deal with.
Is there really a formula for dating and marriage?
Some men are procreational, some men are recreational.
Every Wednesday on TV47, the Men's Conference brings you a cocktail of top-notch advice to breed alpha males for alpha females in the society.
All right, welcome back to the broadcast. We still have Willie and Japheth as we have a conversation on what have been detailed, or what has been detailed in the papers, but importantly, what is of importance, because we can't look at everything that is in the paper. We pick on the crucial matters, and the bilateral talks that we have seen. And this then will also get us to a conversation on our relationship with the neighbors. We still are tensed as to what will happen between us and Somalia. The East African community is out there to make sure that at least we have, East African integration. And this is taken further to Africa at large, African integration. You speak of whether we can ever get to points of having a common, language of instruction, whether we can get to points of having, a common currency, whether we can get to a point where we say, we're done with corruption in Africa. While all this is possible, looking at how China has done well, it appears that we have leaders that are willing to push for the same, but others are struggling day and night to pull us down. And in all this, the hand of the West has not been left aside. We evidently know that we've had people as well who've wished so hard to come in, divide us and rule us because of the resources that Africa enjoys. The bilateral talks between Kenya and Malawi, 8 key things that were looked at. It's not the first time that we're talking about this. Yes. And sometimes in these bilateral talks, then we have fears, because sometimes the leaders agree on things that later come to mess us up. As many would say, the problem that we have between Kenya and Somalia, the maritime border, is a mistake that was done long time ago by the leaders that were there then in terms of the negotiations that we had. Kenya and Malawi speak of, politics, diplomacy, defense, fisheries, aquaculture, cooperatives development, technical cooperation, health and tourism, all this. For the benefit of the people?
It's a matter of double coin, both sides of the coin. I think the Jubilee government, at least in its first term, the second term, I don't know, they actually had trade as a major component of its foreign policy. That was, for me at that point, it looked like a very good idea. Yeah. And then I'm one person who believes in a strong African Union. I believe that African Union can grow to the level of the European Union and other global economic blocs. Yeah. So as long as the trade issues are genuine and they're not individualized, because sometimes we say, and we've been discussing a few things here, that sometimes these things are not meant for the ordinary Kenyan, but it's meant for the big men and women who do business. They're in government, but they do business at the global level. If they're meant for Kenyans and for citizens of African countries, I think that's the direction to go. Yeah. That Africa should be able to trade among itself, should be able to control and compete even with the bigger global markets. And that has to be done either through bilateral talks or through multilateral talks. Yeah. And Kenya, I think, has tried over the years to position itself as a continental power base. Many countries within the African continent look up to Kenya, either it's through trade or through international relations, or even through peace building. We are really a country that has a lot of talents, a lot of skills, and a lot of abilities. If we are able then to fix our politics, then I think we are able to be respected as a power base within the African continent. I will come back to you on the question of the African Union that has hugely been blamed for the failures of Africa today, because it appears they are not, they appear to be toothless. African Union, the regional bodies, ECOWAS, East African Community, IGAD today, Somalia looks at IGAD and they're thinking they're not even genuine in dealing with our problems. Same applies to Sudan and all that. But even before we come to that, we allow Willie to again give us his view on these talks that we always have between our presidents. Good talks for that matter. President Uhuru Kenyatta was in the United States the other day, comes back home with goodies. We hope they are goodies. In the United Kingdom the other day, comes back home with goodies. We got vaccines and all this. But to what extent and to the expense of what? Or who?
First, I would say there is nothing like free lunch. If I call you today and give you free lunch,
Fikiria mara mbili.
Fikiria mara mbili. The next time I'm calling you, you are the lunch.
Okay.
Okay? You are the lunch. Yeah. I don't believe in free stuff. Why would they? They always give us something at the expense of something. Yeah. Okay? There's this golden African rule that says charity begins at home. It works wonders for everything. The economy of this country has collapsed because we have not capitalized on the charity of this country. We have killed sugar production at the expense of sugar importation. We have killed rice production at the expense of rice importation. And so if we start concentrating and putting our effort on what is within our boundaries, then we will start creating these economic activities that will affect the health system of this country, that will affect the health system of this country, that will affect everything that concerns us as a nation. And I am looking forward to the day that we as a nation, or we as Africans, will do more of trading within Africa more than outside Africa. Every African what do we call them? The people who love Africa so much.
Pan-Africans.
Yes, who have been taken out by the West, were capitalizing on the conversation, put Africa first, let's go Africa first. Someone like Patrice Lumumba, he always advocated for Africa doing business together. Someone like this guy from, what was his name? The guy who was taken by...
Sadat, well, Gaddafi, there's
Gaddafi, there's Thomas
Sankara.
Yes, they had the foresight. They could see Africa trading among itself. They say, instead of selling coffee, itoke hapa Kenya, go processed. If we just want to process, if we cannot afford that process, Libya can afford to do the processing for us. Ethiopia can afford doing the processing for us. Let's not do this business with our colonial masters. And until the day we will not need visas to travel among African countries, then we will say we are headed somewhere. Why, as a Kenyan or an African, do I need a visa to go to South Africa? Why do I need a visa to go to Uganda? I do not need that, because that is home for us. We allow inter-trading, inter-business for all of us, and then you will see how exponentially we are going to grow as a continent. Yes, there are so many people with a lot of water. They can, they can channel that water to the driest parts of Africa. It is possible. Let's have a plan for Africa for the next 10, 20, 50, 100 years. Right. So that 100 years from now, you will not have Chinese as Africans. You see, right now we have the flocking of Chinese here, and they're not planning to leave anytime soon, because they can see this is virgin land. There's so much to be done. As we look at hunger today, China today is looking at Africa in the next 50 years. How do we position ourselves in Africa to be the biggest beneficiaries of Africa at the expense of Africans?
True to it, neocolonialism is happening right, at our watch, or, we're watching. And then we ask, what happens to these bodies that we formed so that they can deliberate, they can come up with policies, they can speak of Africa and formulate ways where, we can say as Africans, we can soldier on and become big and great.
First of all, let me tell you, Willie, that if we're not discussing preferred presidential candidates,
he's
we
good.
agree on a lot of things.
Yes.
I agree on everything that you said. I think the problem we have in Africa today, even with the regional bodies, is that we are competing against each other. And for example, many countries within Africa feel that Kenya and to some extent South Africa are very dominating actors within the African space. So we have to really agree on certain issues. So that's why I say I believe in strong African Union. That's more of trade-oriented as opposed to political-oriented. Because currently the African Union seems to be really strong when it comes to defending one of their own. Even in cases where they're obviously wrong. We have to stand by one of our own, because tomorrow you'll also come to stand with me, because all of us are misbehaving in one way or the other. But if we made African Union more of a trade body, where we think about the African economy, we think about how do you position ourselves. If Kenya is good at coffee, how do we help Kenya to become a global player in coffee? If Congo is good in gold, how do you make Congo globally competitive in the gold trade? Then as Africa will be able to move to the next level. So that's what we really, really need to do. We cannot be competitive if we fight against each other, if we feel that each other is a threat.
How many more years for us to ever realize this?
It's not about years. How it's up, it's here.
And leadership.
How long are we to awakening intellectually? How long are we to voting in the right leaders? It is not a matter of time. It can be achieved in the shortest time possible if we put it upon ourselves. A case in point, the other day, China gave us a building that that hosts African leaders every time they go for a meeting. They sponsored that house. They give everything, and then they mic'd everything. So they tap our communication because we were given a free house. We were so excited by a free building. Hey, China has given us a free building. But they're harvesting every conversation that is happening there. And until that day, now we put Africa first. Then we still have a long way to go.
Gentlemen, time is moving very fast. I guess somehow I know a Pan-Africanist, because anytime I'm talking matters Africa, I tend to get immersed in that and all that, and I'd love for us to touch so much more. But again, I'm told time is not on our side. It's either we came in late or time moves very fast when we're talking about crucial matters. As we come to a close, I mean, even the case that we have between Kenya and Somalia is one that could have been addressed at the level of, the region, or as opposed to, or the continent, as opposed for, us to just going to the other level. Do you suppose, or do you see some essence of hope that we will have no choice but to go back on the table and have a gentleman's agreement for the benefit and the peace of these nations and the nations around?
I think the ADR process is the best, the out-of-court settlement. Remember that some of these conflicts are what even lead into issues around terrorism.
Yeah.
Immediately we start fighting, then our own security is interfered with. As much as we agree that as Kenyans, as any patriotic Kenyan, that we must defend what's our own. Yeah. What President Uhuru was calling no inch, one more inch, or 1 inch less. As a Kenyan, I believe in that.
Yes.
But also believe in this issue of trying as much as possible to avoid taking each other to ICJ.
Right.
Let's really use our own internal mechanisms to solve some of these conflicts. And it's now the responsibility of both sides to not take very hard positions. We must agree somewhere
in between.
Yes.
All right, Willie, I know you'd have loved for us to touch, politics. Raila headache in search of running from Mount Kenya.
Yes.
UDA wave pushes rebels to Ruto fall. Critics of Deputy President William Ruto in the Rift Valley have gathered enough courage for Damascus moment in order to survive the hustler wave as the general election approaches, and so much more in politics. But
yes.
Story for another day as we close.
But allow me, Linda, for 1 minute, just to say there are girls you really inspire.
Yeah.
They said, when you see Linda, tell her you really inspire us.
This is beautiful on a Friday morning. Thank you.
They are between 18 and 35 years old.
Nice.
Most of them are in college, others in university. They say you really inspire them.
I'm
and
humbled.
you should host them on one of your shows, one of these fine days.
You put me on a fix. I will.
They are called Nyarari. Nyarari is Mount Kenya. Nyarari means a very young, beautiful girl of Mount Kenya. They said that they will not sit in the peripheries again. They want to be actively involved in the happenings of their nation.
Nice.
And they just want their voices to be heard. They have needs and they want them addressed. And said you're one of their mentors, because most of them are doing even journalism. And so I would like for you to have a conversation with these girls so that you can even mentor them. So salamu zimefika.
Salamu zimefika na
from Nyarari.
And zimefika while we're on air. I've been pushed to a fix. And who am I to say no? Who am I to say no? So definitely Nyarari will be having them soon as possible. So we have that conversation after this. Thank you so much. Remember, I mentioned earlier on that we'll be talking about waste management, especially on our waters. And so that is the conversation that we are picking next. Willie Kamau, political analyst, the last speaker. Thank you so much for speaking to us this morning. And Japheth Ogola, governance expert. Thank you as well. We hope to have you some other time.
Thank you.
Anytime.
All right, after this break, we come back with more.